So, female empowerment. It's a theme that pops up often in Western media. Um, I mean, there are interviews that Nancy Pelosi has given, like the Washington Post interview, where she claims women only recently gained a seat at the table. And then, fictionally speaking, I guess a fictional example would be Robin Buckley from Stranger Things season 4, going on a rant about how nobody takes girls serious, and I just wanted to. It's so so timid, so compliant. Bottom line is, women always have had more power than men, politically and or socially, especially as it pertains to Western culture. But um, I guess the obvious examples of powerful women are on a more global scale. Like they're not specific to the West. There's Cleopatra, Catherine the Great, so forth and so on. There are plenty of other female rulers, like Bloody Mary, who's pretty ruthless female ruler. Um, Now, of course, those cases could be summed up as, well, those are all white women by today's standards, but my assertion that women actually do have power, I think it still holds because the loudest people generally are white women. So, I mean, I guess that could be opened up itself, but generally in the West, the loudest advocates of feminism, aka white feminism, are white women. So, those political examples I think are valid. Regardless of that, regardless of the politics, I would say women's social power, even though it's less implicit, like politics aside, monarchy aside, uh, in the West, their social power, it holds more weight given its ability to influence politics. On one hand, there's what can be described as prox- power by proximity. Um, Wives, daughters, even mothers' ability to influence men in power, sometimes resulting in malice, even, or at least ignorance of malice. I guess historically, an example would be Carolyn Dunham, the accuser of Emmett Till. So there we have this woman, which by feminist standards had no power, e.g., for example, couldn't probably open a bank account given the time of the event, but yet was able to influence the men around her to carry out a brutal lynching. So if that's not power, what the fuck is power? If that's not power, like really. Of course, there are fictional representations of this phenomenon. I guess, for example, you could look at like the female relatives of Tony Soprano on The Sopranos. They're not powerful on paper, so to speak. For example, Carmela Soprano is but a mere housewife, and his sister is basically a drifter. But, there's the example of when Carmela persuades a woman to write Meadow a letter of recommendation. And the sister basically, in one episode, a later episode, gets away with murdering her fiance. And most of this is predicated on their proximity to Tony, who granted is a male, but still, this is a relationship more afforded to women than men in reality. So, by and large, the metrics that modern feminists, aka white feminists, use to assess power are faulty, is the only way to put it. So, despite only gaining the right to vote, etc., less than a century ago, women's perceived higher value in Western society affords them inherent powers that would not be granted to most men. And that's especially given, if we look at men as a set alone, most men aren't powerful. So you have the small powerful, but most are just normal powerless men. But generally, all women can get access to that small group of powerful men just by their feminine attributes or whatever, sexuality, so forth and so on, perception of them being less threatening, whatever, however you want to flip it. So, you know, with that said, thanks for listening. If you listen this far, this is just me testing out a new medium to express ideas that, again, I've also expressed and continue to express in my free blog called Pissy Blog. So, pissyblog.com. If you want to get a more formal take on some of these topics that I'll be discussing with the blog. But that said, thanks.